Welcome to Life Lessons and Lattes with Lanisha. I'm super excited. We are now on episode 6, Use Your Youth Wisely. I am Lanisha Porter of lanishaporter.com and also the author of Maximizing Her. This book was released earlier this year under my own publishing company. And I am super excited because I have a very special lady in the house tonight, one of my favorite women, Miss Andrea Ford, who I affectionately call Mom. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, she had a very busy schedule, but she's here, so I'm grateful for it. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into chapter 6.
Okay.
So for those of you who may be new to the series, when I wrote this book, Maximizing Her, Navigating Life After Girlhood, it was written as a love letter or a devotional to my unborn daughter. What are the things that I would want her to know as she, ventures into womanhood from girlhood? And so when I got to chapter 6, Use Your Youth Wisely, cautioning, my future daughter to take the time to really think about what you're doing with your life while you're young is super important.
Yes.
So I think at the beginning of the book, I'm talking about love, and, love is one of those huge staples of girlhood
Right.
and womanhood.
Right.
But now we're getting into the existentialism of what it means to be a human, what it means to be a great person, and engage in great acts. So when you read Use Your Youth Wisely, what were some of your thoughts?
Well, first and foremost, I think when you began to talk about life as the beginning and the end, looking at it like that, and then paying attention to what happens in the middle.
Yes.
That is what made me think, oh, okay, this is going to be good. And this is something that people really need to be thinking about.
Yeah.
Because it matters so much what you do with your in-between.
Yeah.
So we know we're born and we know our days will come to an end, but our in-between, our middle is so important. And what we do and how we shape ourselves during that time is just so important, and we just really need to pay attention to it.
Yeah, and we're going to jump into it. I have some questions for us. So we're going to jump in. And you are completely right. When I wrote chapter 6, I started it off by comparing it to the 2 dates that I realized are super important in life. Your enrollment at the cradle,
Right.
or your enrollment, when you're born, and then your graduation, at the grave. So you enroll at the cradle and graduate at the grave. I've read that somewhere. I want to say it was probably Mitch Albom's Tuesdays with Maury. That's exactly what it was, I believe. That's one of my favorite books of all time. I love Mitch Albom. Anything Mitch Albom, I will read. I love him. That was one of the first authors that I found, and I was like, wow, he was like a soul partner, like someone that sees the world exactly how I see it. Like I felt like I've had so many conversations with him. But when I read that, I think I read that in 9th grade, enroll at the cradle, graduate at the grave. So, for me, when I started really understanding the intensity of those dates, I was, when you get to high school, it's an exciting time, right? You get to reinvent yourself.
Right.
You're growing up. Life is new. You have so many opportunities to just live,
You do.
But then something very sobering happens. You reach your senior year, and then you realize, wow, everything that I've done is now coming to a close.
Yeah.
And experiencing that made me wonder, what if life itself in full is like this? So with you having maturity on your side, can you tell us how quickly life flies by? How quick does it go?
Well, life goes by so fast. Matter of fact, in the Bible, I believe it's James, it says life is but a vapor. That it happens so fast, and it really does. You mentioned high school.
Yeah.
And I always look back at high school like, oh, it's such a great time, because it was, but it's such a confusing time as well.
It was probably confusing for her because she went to Mill, not the best high school that there is to go to, which is Central.
Well, no. That wouldn't be the reason. But so for most, high school is when you're going through those ages where you're trying to figure out, what do I like? What people do I want to hang around? What types of things are interesting to me? What am I thinking about for the rest of my life? Some of us, even in, you get to 9th grade and you're like, oh, I'm still a kid. But it's coming real fast The 12th grade will be there before you know it.
Before you know
and
it.
so that time, you'll start to talk to teachers, and other people will come into your life, and they're talking about what you're going to do next, So then it becomes confusing because you feel like, I got to hurry up and figure something out.
I have to hurry up and figure it out.
So,
yeah.
Looking back from today to then, that feels like yesterday.
Yeah.
Like high school was like yesterday when I'm trying to figure out what am I going to do next. And as a matter of fact, I'm thinking when I graduated, I had no clue what I was going to do next.
Really?
It's like, I always did really well in school.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to brag. I was so smart, But I did really well in school, and, things just came easy to me. So it was like, when I got finished, it was like, what do I really want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have a clue. And I had a friend who said to me, hey, you're smart. You do good in math. Why don't you be an engineer? And I said, okay. That's literally how I decided what I was going to do in college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, let's slow all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about your background. You have a lot going on.
Sure. So now, I'll start from now and I'll go backwards.
Okay.
So now, I own a business, a black car service called Executive Class Transportation.
We'll drop the link to that below.
Thank you. And that was birthed out of just my husband and I's passion for helping people, our hospitality that we have. We did that for about 6 or 7 years and realized we were really good at hospitality. So we decided to do that full time. So we've been doing that, and it's going really well. We also are directors of a youth program that we've been running for about 20 some odd years now, Children Against Negativity, where I've seen hundreds of youth come past me, that I've been involved and able to touch their lives in so many different ways, some closer than others, but being able to impact the lives of youth.
Yes.
Is like nothing. I cannot even explain to you how rewarding that is.
Yeah.
So that, and then also we do missions in Africa, where we go over to Kenya, and we now have 3 schools.
Y'all hear that, you guys?
Yes. And lots of churches, and just going over there to meet with the students. Another opportunity to impact lives.
Mm-hmm.
Meet with the students there, and they just touch my heart. They have my heart.
Yes.
When I'm away, I miss them so much. So that, and then also just working alongside my husband, we also do, some properties and things like that.
Yes.
And then working with a nonprofit, Master Builders Academy. Very involved with that and helping to push that forward. Lots of great things going with Master Builders Academy.
Yes, and if you guys were tuned in last week with me and Domine for episode 5, we talked about Master Builders. So board member, correct?
Correct.
Board member sitting right here. So definitely highly recommend you sign up. You have accomplished a lot in your lifetime, and it's not even halfway,
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to what's coming next.
For sure.
Like now, it's like, you try all these things, and it's not easy, but to push through them is rewarding in itself.
It's a rewarding part.
But the perseverance just lets you know how much more you really can do, and then you push on to the next thing. So I'm ready for the next thing.
So after, getting a glimpse of her extensive and stellar resume, right? Backtracking and going back to the seed of all of, of where it all begins. Mm-hmm. What were the things you were focusing on in your youth, and would you say they have given you a good return? So now in this day and time,
Right. So in my youth, when I think back, one thing that was a constant was my faith in God. So from a youth, very young, when you're taken to church and you don't have your own decision, but you go. So that was one thing that it's like, if you have a foundation, a core somewhere, that is going to help you throughout life. And that has remained constant. Something, when you're going through things, you can always fall back on your faith in God. And that has been a blessing. But then another thing that was always unique about me was I was going to win. So, going from playing games with my sisters, competitions with say we decided there's this box of cookies, I'm going to make sure that I set some to the side, because I want to wait till everybody eats all of theirs, and then I'm gonna come back later and have some left over. I mean, in everything, I had to be the best. I had to be the best. And that goes from in school. I was making the grades. Now there were times when, just because kids are cruel,
Yes.
they can be really cruel. So there was like this thing that it was like not cool to be smart.
Yeah.
So even though I was doing so well, they tried to shame me.
Yeah.
Different ones tried to shame me for being smart, to the point where I almost fell for it. Was like, oh, well, I'm not going to get an A because that's not the thing to do. But I quickly realized that that wasn't the way to go, because not only was it going to hurt me, but it hurt other people around me too. So I quickly moved past that, but I was going to win. So, so when I set out to do something, I was going to get it done. Even if something came and, knocked me off my path, I was going to make sure that I got back around to it and was able to accomplish what I set out to do.
Yeah.
And I still do that today. Even when things get difficult, no, I'm going to make sure I get it done.
Yeah.
I'll find a way.
So I know, especially with everything that you do, and it's very evident in how you lead your life, your faith in God really is, it's anchored. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I've always thought was important, even though I'm still very young myself, is that what you invest in your youth, it matures. Mm-hmm. And those seeds blossom into real fruits. Yeah. So I think it's powerful, you saying that even when you were young, you had your eye on Christ, and following that through and through, and just seeing what your life has blossomed into. Yeah. So that's powerful. That's a shout out to anyone watching. It's never too early to invest in yourself.
Never too
early.
And
you never have to be ashamed of the good qualities you have about yourself, because those things are going to mature. And that's the advantage that you have of doing it while you're young, is presumably you have the advantage of time on your side, and it's going to make you stronger,
That's right.
What are some ways in which you think people abuse their youth?
Well, so in this day and time, and in any time really, there's so many factors that can deter not only youth, some adults as well, but can deter youth from that path that they're set out on. Mm-hmm. You have an idea of what you want to do, and you say, oh, I'm going to go for it, I'm going to do it. But then there's things that can knock you off that path. So some of the things that, an abusive way, I guess you would say it, is when you don't turn from those things that try to stop you. So like I see youth all the time that will get involved with either people or circumstance or some outside factors that they absolutely know are hindering them. Yeah. Sometimes, something takes you by surprise. Yeah. It can take you by surprise, and you deal with it.
Yeah, that's life.
That's life. But to continue in it is abusive, because you're hindering your own self, and you know the answer. The answer is stop. Yeah. The answer is stop. The answer is get away. And if you can't do it on your own, the answer is get help. Yeah. And these are things that we've taught, and, you know this. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we try to, give them the out, say, well, maybe they don't know. No, they know, because it's everywhere. Mm-hmm. It's everywhere. So I think sometimes, youth can hurt themselves by not seeking to do right when they know what right is to do. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, for sure, one thing that really amazed me when I came to Can Camp, Children Against Negativity, their group, seeing so many young people who were just completely unafraid to submit and just worship. Mm-hmm. I mean, we came there, we had fun, relays, very competitive, but the intentional and emphatic presence of just like kids worshiping is something like I've never seen before.
Yeah. Well, for kids and for, young adults as well, to create an atmosphere or give them an opportunity, a space where they can be free. Yes. There's a lot with social media these days that will kind of keep people from being free, especially when it comes to their walk with the Lord.
Yeah.
Because they feel like, maybe somebody's going to be recording and somebody's going to plaster their business all over the place. When you're dealing with your relationship with the Lord, that's personal. So for somebody to just willingly interfere, just come right into your personal communion with God and plaster it all over Facebook or Instagram or wherever they put it, that makes you kind of hold back. Mm-hmm. But at Can Camp, that's a space where we do away with phones.
Yeah.
So there's no recording. You don't have to worry about, is somebody going to take a picture of me? Is somebody going to record me in my personal time with God? That's not going to happen. So you can be free. And as we, create that space for you, then they welcome, the Spirit to come in and be able to have that time where they can commune with the Lord and just be free to worship.
Yeah.
It is awesome.
It's something super powerful.
It is. I love it.
So posing the same question to myself, what are some ways in which I think people abuse their youth? And I think for me, because I am young, like I living in it, so it feels more fresh for me, but just carelessly aiming. I've always said, if you aim at nothingness, you're going to get lucky and hit your target. Mm-hmm. It kind of goes with the saying that, if you shoot for the moon, at least you'll land on the stars.
Right.
You have to aim at something because that's where you're going to organize your efforts to go.
Right.
So if you don't set your sights on anything, you're not going to secure anything. Also, for me, like what I wrote about in the book, speaking more so to like womanhood, is the false pursuit of beauty. Mm-hmm. I think when we're young, we have this idea that our power is strictly in like beauty, or it's in, our body, and we fail to focus or invest in things that are more virtuous, or things that are going to hold more power when the beauty fades away. And I literally write this in the book, you guys. You really have to check out chapter 6. It's really one of my favorite chapters. I basically say to my own future daughter, invest in the type of beauty that's powerful even after, your outer beauty fades away. Because inner beauty it elongates your presence long after you've departed.
That's correct.
What are your thoughts on that?
It does. So thinking about outer beauty. Mm-hmm. So as young girls grow up, that's what they're attracted to. They look at, the famous lady on TV. Oh, she's so pretty.
Yes.
And then they go to school and they notice the teacher that's the prettiest. You have teachers that just come looking any old kind of way, but then you have the teacher that comes by and her hair is always nice and she's got her makeup and she dresses real cute, and you're like, ooh, Miss So-and-so is so nice, because she's the pretty one. Same thing at church or everywhere else they go. That's the first thing that they notice, and then they begin to associate prettiness with niceness. Oh, she's pretty, she's nice, that sort of thing. And it's not until they begin to get closer to these particular women that they can actually see what's inside them. And then they realize that just because you're pretty doesn't mean that you're pretty on the inside as well. Yeah. Because a lot of times that can be the case, that somebody may do a lot to make themselves look beautiful, but on the inside their attitude is wrong. They're not nice to people. They don't, interact well with others. So it takes some time to actually be around people to kind of see what's really inside of them. And you're right, that's what you're going to remember. So you can look at somebody and say, oh, they're pretty, and then you'll leave their presence and then that's it. But once you have time to spend some time with them and talk with them and see what's inside and let them, say some stuff that's lasting, things that, pique your interest, or it's maybe something you were wondering about and they touched on it and you're like, oh, wow, I've been thinking about that. You'll remember that days, months, years on down the line after you leave their presence. So you're right. Inner beauty, it lasts.
I think it's a societal enforcement. I think girls feel that way because that's what society tells them, and it continues to enforce. You're pretty, and that'll get you far. And it really is a privilege to be pretty. And I say that because people do treat you differently when you present yourself, to be attractive. But it's such a fleeting thing. It's not going to last forever, and I don't think you should put much stock in solely that. Of course, you want to look good. Everybody wants to look good. But for me, what I wrote in the book that I would, highly caution my own daughter is inner beauty is also a very worthy investment, especially when you're young. Especially when you're young. And it's something that I think matures over time. It's a process. But just making the realization that outer beauty isn't everything.
Yes, it does. And you're right. You said something there about over time.
Over time, yeah.
So, one has to come into what they are.
Yes.
Because people can start off not being very nice.
Yeah.
But once you realize, you know what, I'm not a nice person. That can be changed.
Yeah.
We give a lot of people an out. Oh, that's just how they are.
Yeah.
No, don't give them that out because they can be nice.
Yeah.
They just choose not to. And that's not okay.
Yeah.
It's not okay.
Choice is destiny. What you choose to do is destiny. So you can always choose to invest in better things, more noble things. Present, it's never too late to change. All right. So getting down to the practical matters of it, we're doing all this talk, but I always like to make it real for people so that they can have, things to take away from, and they can say, I can put this into practice. I understand it.
Right.
Where is the healthy balance of the two extremes of being too cautious in your youth, but then not being cautious enough?
Yeah, I think that differs from person to person because we do have to be cautious.
You do have to be cautious.
Cautious of physical cautious. Looking around when you're out, but you also have to be cautious of your feelings because you can get into situations that will determine the path of your life that can be altered in a second just because of who you came in contact with. So you have to be cautious, but then there is too cautious.
There is
where you're guarded, so very guarded that you can't even interact with people. These may be people that you need to have some sort of relationship with for maybe for business sake or just for life's sake. You never know who that one mentor is that's going to lead you to that destined place that God has prepared for you. That's like, this is going to be awesome, and they have the knowledge to get you there.
Yeah.
But if you're so guarded that you can't receive, then you'll miss that.
You'll miss it.
So you really have to be careful with who you're allowing to be in your life and who you keep away from your life.
Yes.
Which goes back to, having that faith in God, somebody that you can go and say, you know what, Lord, I need your help with this one.
Yeah.
you know.
I think that was me to you last week. Yeah. We stayed on the phone for like 2 hours.
2
I
hours.
was like, I need you. Okay, so for me, I'm going to talk a little bit about myself now. So I think that I had to learn that, maybe I learned it kind of late, but I cared so intensely about what people thought about me.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was almost, I stayed policing my true self because it was like, well, what if they think I'm a bad person? Or what if they think I'm not a good role model? Or what if they think that, I'm this thing and I'm not? And I think especially being a Black young woman, you're always hypersexualized. From the time you're young, people just, they put labels on you, and if you're not careful, that label can become your limit, And so growing up, I was always like, I want to be different. I want to stand out. I don't want to be known for negativity. I didn't want to align myself with things that I wasn't comfortable with. And so I think I kind of got into this personal sphere of where I wasn't really myself. Like, I've always wanted to dye my hair blonde. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, I don't want to do that because, I'm conservative and I don't want people to think that I'm wild, I'm a partier. Because, they always say, like, well, blondes have more fun or blondes are dumb. So I was like, I'm none of those things. So I'll just stay conservative and keep my hair, natural color because I don't want, I want to be cautious of how, I appear to people. Mm-hmm. And then I remember I got to college and I've always wanted my belly pierced. This is so silly, you guys. I've always wanted my belly pierced. And I was like, well, I don't want to do it because, what if me being a mentor to so many young ladies, like, what if somebody sees it and they think like, oh, well, you know, she's this or she's that, or
she's a wild girl.
She's a wild girl. She's tarnishing her body. And so I called my dad, like, really concerned and frightened, like, I want to pierce my stomach. Can I do it? And he laughs and he's like, you are 19. Like, you're a grown woman. He was like, you can make your own choices. I'm just here for moral support at this time. So I kid you not, I sat down with my philosophy professor and I'm like, if I pierce my stomach, will it change the trajectory of my life? And I promise I had a whole discussion because you guys, you have to realize I'm an overthinker. Like, but whatever, you know, I sat down with him and I was like, will this one choice, though it's small, will it change the trajectory, you know, of my course? Will people look at me different? Will people associate negative thoughts with me? And, you know, he was like, you know, as much as I think as a philosophy professor, I really think you're overthinking this. So for me, that has been a huge struggle, trying to find the balance of keeping myself in position for opportunities when they come, but also understanding, like, you are 19, you are 20, you are 24, like, live your life. And so now I have let up and let my hair down and, you know, have fun. Colored it blonde, go on girl trips, just really enjoy being young, because we're gonna only get this time once in our life. So for me, I will say it has been a tough balance of living life, enjoying it while I have it, but also making sure that I'm securing opportunities for the future. So have you had any experiences like that where you had to struggle to find a balance?
Well, I think everybody deals with that to a certain extent.
Yeah.
You know, growing up, you kind of look at the world and say, what does the world want from me?
Yeah.
You know, what do they think of me? What am I supposed to be in this world? And it's like trying to shape what that is. It can be difficult. It can be confusing, even for yourself. You know, people looking at you might look and say, oh, you got it all together.
Yeah.
When on the inside, you're struggling with, I don't even know, what do I look like? You know, this, you know, I was just telling my son the other day about how, you know, I'm on him so bad about keeping his face washed. Because when I was young, I had bumps galore. And that was something that was like, oh, it was horrible for me. You know, just going through that, you know, just knowing that people would look at me a certain way, you know, make comments, because kids can be cruel.
Especially in the day of social media. Yeah.
So, you know, just not wanting him to have to deal with that. You know, there was, you know, things like that, you know, appearance-wise, that used to make me feel like I'm less than. And so I do remember years ago, I think I was, this was way back, I think I was like 12. And my uncle, because I had always thought, well, I'm not cute, I'm not pretty, I don't, you know, I couldn't think of anything that was good about me per se. Well, my uncle came over one day and was like, you are so pretty, you should be a model. And I thought, me?
Yes, you.
It was like, you know how sometimes, you know, your thoughts and changes, like you feel a shift, like something just changed. Like, what? And I never realized until looking back on that how low my self-esteem was. Like, I had no, you know, confidence in myself as far as, oh, I know I'm this and I can do this and I can do that because I'm all this. No, I didn't think that at all. You know, and I looked in the mirror, I was like, she is not cute. She got bumps all over her face. She's not cute, you know. And so for him to say that, it kind of changed my whole perspective of me. Yeah. You know, and I was like, well, he sees something, so maybe there is some cute in there somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and from then I started thinking differently, to the point that I guess it was probably in my early 20s, a friend of mine would say, oh, you are so conceited. And I would be like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
I just know who I am.
Yeah. Once you know who you are as a woman, it's like nobody can tell you different. Once you get cued in on who you are, oh, you know, that's powerful. And it's so funny that you say that shift, that change in paradigm. That's real. I think for me, it kind of happened toward the latter part of college when I realized, like, Lanisha, just live your life. Live your life. You know, anything that's supposed to be for you, any opportunity that is secured for you through God, nothing that you can do can, you know, mess that up if it's truly for you.
Right.
And so I think that's when I kind of let go, let my hair down, and tried to stop caring as much, you know, what people thought, because from a very young age, I have been trained to care what people think, especially like when in my law program. I think probably that's when it intensified. You know, we're taught you have to dress professionally, you have to watch what you put on social media, your resume has to be perfect. There was this thing where, you know, obviously, you know, mock trial is something you do in law, and people would put mock trail instead of mock trial, and it would completely get their resume knocked out of the batch, because that's a very minuscule thing that you should have paid attention to. So for me, it's like, well, if something, you know, such as confusing the I with the A can change someone's candidacy for a job, obviously I need to nitpick everything that I do. So that's what I did to myself on the largest scale. Can I get my stomach pure? Can I change my hair? You know, should I put a twang on, you know, certain words, like speak proper? And so it wasn't until like I stepped into my own and was like, just be yourself. And what I find, there's really nothing more sexy or more beautiful than a woman who just knows who she is and she says, take it or leave it. And so now that's what I'm learning to do. Life is about learning things, but it's also about unlearning things. And so that disease to please is very real, and I want to get rid of that. I want to unlearn that. Okay. As it pertains to women of the Christian faith, do you think trying to walk the straight and narrow path that pleases God muddles the idea of what it means to have fun?
No way.
She said no way.
No way. So, because I have a great time. But just, you know, thinking back, you know, even as a young person in the faith, you know, there was talk about, like, you can't do this and you can't do that and you can't do this and you can't do that, as if you can't have fun. And that's not the case at all. You know, you can't do some things that you probably shouldn't be doing anyway. You know, if it's okay to do, then, and it's fun, then have a good time. Enjoy yourself. There's plenty of things you can do that do not conflict with what God has for you. You know, once you're in the Word and you're reading, you know, you develop that relationship with God that you know when you shouldn't be doing something. You know, somebody might approach you and say, hey, let's go to this certain place. You know, you can easily say, oh no, sorry. I don't go there, or no, thank you. You know, there's other places you can go instead. You know, so once getting, you know, a grasp on that, it was like, well, I don't have to fall for what everybody else is saying. I'm having a great time. You know, just I'm not doing what they're doing. But I'm having a great time, and there's lots of fun. You know?
I think I'm gonna dive deeper into that. But answering the question for myself, I think it's harder when you're younger to understand that line. There's a artist, gospel artist called Jonathan Reynolds. Familiar with him?
I've heard of him.
He is amazing. I've met him. And in 2013, I think that's when he released it, there's a song called Gray. And in the song, paraphrase, he's basically saying, once you are a true believer and you are aware of God's laws, you understand that it has to be black or white. There's no gray. You can't afford to live in the gray area. And I would have to say, like, there were things that more recently, I would probably say around the age of 23, that's when I became more interested in reading the Bible for myself. I think for a long time, you go to church and then your pastor's the middleman. You know, you understand it only from his interpretation of it. But then you reach a point where you're like, I really want to get it for myself. So when I sat down and got intimate with the Word, I realized, like, wow, okay, this is why you don't do certain things, because everything, every act, every interaction, it has an origin. And sometimes you really just don't know any better. You don't know any better. Like, for instance, recently I went on a girls trip and we had a blast. And it was mentioned, hey, let's go get a psychic reading. I said, oh no. I said, oh no, like, I know better than to do that, because that's what Saul got in trouble for, right? Like, trying to call a medium or consult with someone from the other side, from the dead, to understand what God has written for your life. You're not supposed to do that. If you're in your Bible, you know that.
Right.
But if you are not, if you're just kind of living life and you haven't reached that spiritual maturity to say, to get intimate with the word for yourself, you wouldn't know any better. So, I didn't hold anybody accountable of not knowing any better, but it's just like, from what I've encountered in my intimacy with God, God doesn't want you to do that, because that presents as a lack of trust in him, which is a lack of faith, which is the most offensive thing to God. So, no psychic reading for me. But, that's fun for some people. It's like the thrill of knowing what's going to come next in your life. But now I understand, that's why as believers, true believers, you're not supposed to do that.
Right.
Peek into the future to see what God has for you. You're supposed to pray. Just hope
Exactly.
it comes.
Exactly.
Trust that it's going to come.
And when you pray, he will give you glimpses.
Yeah.
He'll give you glimpses. He'll show you. He'll give you a thought. He'll let you see that you're on the right track.
Yeah.
So it's not like you don't have any indication of which way to go, and you're not just wandering around aimlessly talking about, I'm praying. He's directing you. So there is some direction being given.
Yeah. And it's fun fact. So I don't know if I told you this. I don't know if I did. But for the past, what year is it? 2019? So for the past 4 years, I've kept a dream pad.
Okay.
So I've always loved the story of Joseph. And I always thought it was so beautiful that God cares enough to visit us and give us previews of what the future is going to bring. So when I really got excited about the story of Joseph, I was like, I'm going to start recording my dreams. So for the past 4 years, every time I wake up and I have a dream that I can remember, I go to my dream pad in my phone and I write it down. Over the past 4 years, everything that I have written down, I kid you not, has come to pass.
Wow.
Has come to pass. From like people entering my life, me losing people, just small events happening, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
God showed it to me. It's just a matter of patience, though.
Right.
So.
Right. Because it's not, if you dream it tonight, doesn't mean it's happening tomorrow. So, and that's a lot of times we have to realize that. It's like we're asking for direction and he's pointing us which way to go, but we can't be impatient with it. Thinking, oh, okay, now I'm supposed to do this. Well, I thought you said this, well, not tomorrow. Sometimes tomorrow.
Yeah, sometimes tomorrow.
Sometimes tomorrow.
Sometimes 2 or 4 years from now.
Right.
Because I go back to stuff, that happened in 2017, and it's like, I dreamt that in 2017.
Wow.
So that really sealed the deal for me. Like, no, you don't need psychic readings. Like,
no,
you're fine.
No.
You're fine just dreaming. So now I really love going to bed at night, because it's like,
ooh, what am I dreaming about tonight?
What am I going to dream about tonight? I really do. All right. So wrapping up, how do you think the virtuous woman in Proverbs 31 spent her youth? And I'm actually just going to slow it down a bit. So if you have been tuned into this series, this fall series, chapter 1, where we discussed, chapter 1, episode 1, we talked about you versus them. And we talked about the conflicting matters that make it hard sometimes for us to have sistership with other women when our virtues are different, right? And that's where we first introduced the topic of the virtuous woman. But if you are new, or maybe you don't know who the virtuous woman is, in the Bible mentions a woman who is filled with all of these different virtues, and they're organized in such a way where her worth is more than rubies, and her husband and her children praise her, and she is blessed. So it's kind of like the standard of what the Christian woman should be. So I'm asking Mrs. Ford today, how do you think the virtuous woman in Proverbs 31 spent her youth? What do you imagine?
I think she spent her youth learning. I think, whether forced or voluntary, because some of the things that in that passage that talks about that she does, they don't just happen. Like, she was an early riser.
Lord knows.
She was an early riser. She didn't just say, oh, I think I just want to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. No, she saw somebody do that, or somebody said, hey, this is what time you get up in the morning.
Yeah.
So she got up early. She had her time with the Lord. She would go out, get the food, because in her day, there wasn't Kroger's, so she would have to go out to the market, or if she was going out back, then, get some cabbage and cut it down and get the tomatoes or whatever she had to do so that she could have meals, prepare for her meals for the day. And then it talks about how she had her children ready. She got their clothes ready. She saw somebody do that. Some granny, some mama that she watched that always had her stuff together. She saw that and was like, that's how you're supposed to do it. It may have been that somebody sat her down and said, come on, let me teach you how to do this. Flipping back a little bit, I remember I was probably about 10 years old. And one of my greatest memories of church at that time was the ladies in the kitchen got all the young girls together and they taught us how to make homemade biscuits. We had a blast. But those are things that they don't just come out of thin air. They don't just, some things are taught.
Yeah.
So I think she spent her time learning from those that she lived with, learning from the people around her, and just learning from life and learning from God. It talks about how she spent time with the Lord. So, the Lord will teach you the missing pieces that you have from the things that you glean from others. He'll fill in those gaps for you. For sure. So she spent time learning.
Yeah. And I think when I read Proverbs 31, I think it's easy to be intimidated. Like, I'm supposed to become all of this? Oh my goodness. She's obviously very responsible. She is prophetic, positive, confident, reliable. She's, just beautiful person through and through.
Yeah.
And, I was going through like, was there any preview or, any context of how she was when she was younger? Because if I'm gauging where I am right now compared to her, I don't know, Lord, but I'm going to stick with it. And so I couldn't help but think, there was no context. It didn't give us any, information besides how she was in her maturity. So if I had to guess about her prematurity, I would also say that maybe she spent time developing. And one thing that I noticed in the Bible is the women in the Bible aren't all virtuous. We hear about them, we tell those sermons, tell those stories. We talk about Mary and how she was able to carry baby Jesus because, she was a virgin, she was blessed, she obviously was sacred, purity. But there are also women in the Bible who fell away from the plan that God has for women. The woman at the well, Homer, and was that her name? The lady who was a prostitute and her husband had to Gomer. And so I appreciate those stories too, because I think it shows and it highlights the fact that it's not about perfection, it's about progress. And that's super important. And even relating that to real life, some of the women that I most admire, some of the women who are held as the most notable figures throughout human history, if you look at their origins, they were not perfect. They did not just come out the womb ready to go. They had to organize their self-values and their personal policies in such a way that they became, somebody great that we can admire. For instance, Oprah Winfrey, she had a child when she was 14 years old. Unfortunately, he passed away. But if we were to just stop her story at the age of 16, maybe all we could say is that, she was promiscuous, or she was doing things that she wasn't supposed to be doing. She wasn't a virtuous person. But as her life has progressed, she becomes these very things that I think that God talks about in Proverbs 31. Generous. Obviously, she's an early riser. She's a billionaire. I think the only Black woman billionaire in the U.S. I don't know. But, or Maya Angelou. She had a child, I think, at 17, 18. There's so many women where if you just dig into the origins of their stories, you'll see things and you're like, well, I would have never thought that that is comparable to how their end presents. Well, that's because you have to keep on living. You know, you use your youth wisely. You learn from those mistakes. You learn things. You unlearn things. You find the balance, and you keep living. You know, into your maturity.
Which can be the reason why maybe God didn't want us to know what her youth was specifically like.
Yeah.
So that nobody would feel discounted.
Yeah.
You know, nobody can feel like you can't be that virtuous woman because of your background. Or, you know, to look at it and say, well, I grew up like this. I didn't have that. So I could never attain to be that virtuous woman.
Yeah.
Not so.
That's good.
Not so. We don't know where she came from or what her background was, but what we do know is because it's been written for us that as a woman we can all attain. It's just, will we put the work in?
That's powerful. Will you put the work in? I really like how you said that. Nobody can be discounted. It doesn't matter what your story looks like.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Because we started different places. You know, all of our backgrounds are different. You know, we didn't, you know, some people grew up with a house full of women that, you know, that maybe had all kind of, you know, real strict details and all that, you know, and maybe they're like, you know, top notch on top of stuff. You know, some of us didn't have none of that.
Yeah.
You know, but we can learn it along the way, and we can ask the Lord to help us become what it is we want to be. If we want to be that virtuous woman, we just have to ask the Lord. He'll show us and direct us, and we can all get there.
Yeah. And I think it's powerful that you say that, because literally I think those were the personal sentiments I kept to myself, was thinking that, oh, because I didn't grow up with a mom, you know, present in my household, giving me that maternal guidance and those maternal wisdoms, like, I don't know how I'm going to turn out. I mean, we're just going to toss up in the air and see where the coin flips. And, you know, although I had the rearing and the backing from my dad, there's just a connection with the woman that you have. And, you know, it feels right, and it guides you. And it's a connection, an intimate connection like no other. It's imbued with so much sacredness. And there's a homegrown trust. And I felt so empty, and maybe at times counted myself out because I didn't have it. Like, I remember one of my first modeling, I guess, attempts. I got myself ready. And in the moment, it was like, oh, wow, like, you know, I look so pretty. But looking back at those pictures 10, 15 years later, it was like, why didn't anybody help me? Like, I needed a trusted woman behind me that day to help me prepare. And so I was like, is this what the rest of my life is going to be like? Like, no woman behind me helping me, no woman that I can trust, you know, giving me that support. But, you know, one thing that I've learned is don't discount the miracles that God can provide for you, because wonderful women, although they may not, you know, belong to me through biology, have come into my life and have stood in those gaps when needed and have helped me figure things out. Right. So,
don't discount your past.
Yeah.
Your path has been laid out for you.
For me.
You know, if you
Lanisha
had not dealt with what you dealt with, you wouldn't be who you are today. Yeah. So everybody has their path that they have to take. Yeah. You know, the things that they have to deal with to shape them into what they are going to be, and not just for themselves, for others. Yeah. You know, somebody has to look at you and say, oh, you did this, you did that, and look at you now. You know, so everybody's story is a blessing for somebody else.
Yeah. And truly, this book wouldn't be written. Like, if I had, you know, the perfect mom at home, if I had, you know, that presence there, I wouldn't have needed to write a book in hopes for my own daughter to understand it as a cheat code for her. So it literally has given me my story. My story has given me my story, literally. So any closing thoughts on chapter 6, using your youth wisely? Any last thing you want to say to maybe the young ladies watching, or just any youth watching? What should they be doing with their time now?
One thing I would like to say, just kind of leading from where we just left that last conversation, is maybe you don't have someone in your life that can be impressionable or that can, you know, be a positive in your life. You know, find a mentor, find someone, you know, there's somebody out there that would be willing to pour into you. You know, get connected with some sort of youth group or something like that, that you can find somebody that you can lean on. Everybody needs somebody. Yeah. You know, at some point in your life, you'll need somebody that you can, you know, talk to, that you can, you know, talk about different things with. You know, as a woman or young lady growing into a young woman, there are some things that you're going to need some help with. And men can't really help you in some areas. Yeah. So you need that woman that you are not afraid to ask those hard questions, and that she's not afraid to give you the answers. Yeah. So look for a mentor, somebody that you can, you know, trust, that would be willing to be that person for you. You know, and then also I had something else and it just left my mind.
It's okay. You can, if you want to, I'll talk about my closing thoughts if you want to try to get what you were saying. My closing thoughts for use your youth wisely is, do not carelessly aim at life. You know, sometimes you may not know what's next. It's okay, but still set your sights on at least what you think you would like to do. Sometimes when I talk to my girls from Urban Girls Rock, it's like, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or what are your interests? And if they can't answer the first question, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I just say, well, what are your interests? You know, you don't have to have it all figured out. Nobody has it all figured out. Life will give you hints, and the dots will be connected as you continue to live. But don't aim carelessly. I truly believe that youth is an incubator for you to mature into your purpose. And I think it is a real blessing if you know your purpose at a young age, because, as I said earlier, you have the advantage of time on your side, maturing you, making you stronger in those areas, so that when you do reach, you know, maturity and you peak, you're going to be something dangerous. You're going to be a powerful and fine and developed work. So pay attention to how you're spending your youth and live a grand life. I think sometimes when we say live life to the fullest or YOLO, you only live once. I think Drake coined that. We think like, oh, you got to go to all the parties. You have to like take that bottle to the head. You got to, you know, get high. And it's like, no, I don't think you should live your life in such a way that literally shortcuts or undercuts the opportunities that can be available to you in the future. But maybe living your best life means going ahead and writing that book, not discounting yourself, saying, well, I'm young, who's going to listen to me? I mean, people used to walk up to me at book signings and it's like, well, what do you know? You're so young. And I quickly had to learn to dismiss that, because I mean, I still meet people who are 40 and 50 and 60 and I'm going to write that book. Well, just write it. Your story is your story. Your story, my story. I started writing it at the age of 16 and published at 19, but it's still a story, and you never know the ripple effect that story will have on people. So living your life could be writing that book, buying that property, falling in love, trying a new thing, traveling and seeing the world. So don't dream too small about what living your life looks like at a young age. And I think, did you find your thought?
Well, I didn't find that thought, but just thinking about the chapter topic, you know, use your youth wisely, just to say something to the older women, use your youth wisely, you know, as in your young people that are around you. Give them opportunity to do some things so that they can grow and develop. You know, it's nothing like being given a chance. Yeah. You know, sometimes we look and say, oh, well, I'll just do it because, you know, I can't find anybody, or everybody's too young, or they're too little, they don't know yet. Don't be so sure. Yeah. These young people are very smart. They are very creative. And, you know, if you could help bring that out of them, you know, at an early age, who knows how far they can go. Yeah. So, you know, older women, use your youth wisely. You know, put them in positions that they can be helpful and effective.
Yeah. And I think it matters. And she's speaking from, you know, truth. She's not saying anything that she doesn't do, because, you know, as I've already said, you know, I didn't grow up with a mother in the house. And so, you know, cooking was a lost skill. It's not in my gift mix. So at the age of 22, I think, you taught me how to make chicken Alfredo. I don't know if you remember that night.
I do remember.
But, you know, we sitting there, and she probably thought, like, this girl is lost. No, and I'm like, is the water hot enough? Like, do I put in the noodles now? And, you know, you taking the time to teach me how to make a meal, which I think is beautiful, to take food and prepare it for a family, and we come together and we commune and we fellowship. That is beautiful. You know, that's a memory I will always have, cooking chicken Alfredo with mom in the kitchen. So thank you for that. Anything else I want to say?
I think that's pretty much it. I will say this, that just seeing you use your youth wisely
Thank you.
is a great, you know, testament for others to look and say, you know, I can do that too. You know, a lot of times if we're not given something or handed something, we just sit back and we don't do anything. But literally, you have taken life and you're living it.
Thank you.
Not waiting for it to tell you what to do next.
Yeah.
You know, so I admire that about you.
Thanks,
and
Mom.
I just say keep pushing, keep doing great things. You know, I see great things in store, and I think you're going to be great.
I love you so much.
I love you too.
I will say, just as, you know, being transparent, sometimes people tell me, like, you know, oh, you're so brave, you're so whatever, but I'm shaking in my boots sometimes when I try new things. Like with mentoring programs, it's like, are they gonna come? You know, and then sometimes when you do, like, people get in your ear, you're like, well, maybe I should wait until I'm 30, so, you know, I have more, you know, something under my belt so people will listen to me. But, you know, I say that to say, do it even if you're afraid. Just do it. Do it even if you're afraid. I end the chapter saying that, you know, you want to live a full life. You want to live a life that is grand, not by anybody else's measure, but by your measure, you know. And you want to live in such a way that, you know, when that day comes that we must bow our head in humble submission to the call that God gives for all his children to come home, you can do it knowing that you had a life well lived, and in hopes that that eternal rest will be well deserved. So use your youth wisely, live life, and understand that truly, while you are young, you have the time, you have the energy, you have the ambition, you have the health. Go for it. Go for it. Because one thing that I notice when I talk to people, I love talking to older people, life, I assume, starts to feel like a slow betrayal, you know, when you can't do the things that you used to do. You wake up and then your back is popping and you like, oh, snap. I mean, I even feel it. I'm only 24, but, you know, sometimes I feel it. Like, I used to dance when I was in high school, and my flexibility is not as strong as it was. Sometimes my balance, if I do a dance combo, it's like, in high school, I used to be able to nail it. Now I have to practice 10 times harder, you know? And so if I'm only like this at 24, I can only imagine, you know, God willing, you know, when I'm 60 or 80 or whatever, like, what will life feel like? So it is very sobering when you realize, you know, youth is just not this endless abyss.
That's right. That's right. It's so funny that you mentioned the dance. So I was dancing with a liturgical dance team, you know, years ago, you know, and I was like, oh, I loved it. But, you know, it was so much going on and so many other things that I was dealing with. So I kind of got away from it. Well, then this year when we went to Africa, and I was like, oh, I'll dance with you all. You know, it's been a while, but I was like, oh, I'll do it. Oh, this is going to be great. I don't have it like I used to. It took just to remember the different moves, you know, and what comes next. And then, oh, they tried to throw a second dance in on me, and it was just like, that's too much. You know, so doing as much as you can while you're young, you know, get it all in, and then don't stop, because it's the breaks in time that makes you forget or that weakens you. But if you continue, you know, and press forward and just continue, then you'll stay strong.
You'll stay strong. And I think it carries over also into the relationships that you have. I start the chapter by saying, you know, I took my mom to a dentist appointment, and in the dentist office, I'm listening to two people who thought they knew each other actually confirm, like, oh, I do know you. And when they started talking about the memories they had from way, way back, I was like, what if that's me and my closest friends one day? Like, you know, one day you're eating lunch together, you're sharing all the day-to-day intimacies, and then fast forward, it's like life just happens, and then you're seeing them in passing 20, 30 years later, and you are reminiscing on what used to be just yesterday. And so that really, really, really made me slow down and start saying yes to my friends. Like, yes to that girls trip, and yes to just going to the movies and just being young and just riding down the highway with the music playing and just enjoying our youth while we have it, because you never know, as you said, life is but a vapor. When someone is going to be called home, you never, life is going to start taking us on different paths. We'll get married, we'll start having kids, we won't have time to catch up. And so, you know, it's like, all right, when I was on my girls trip this past weekend, it was like, thank you, God, for this moment, to be in fellowship with these women while we're young, while we can have fun. We have responsibilities, but, you know, we can press pause and just live in our youth. So enjoy your youth. Now it is time for our fan feature. The fan feature is the portion of the show where we hear from our audience and someone writes us in and tells us the greatest life lesson that has been recurring for them. This week, we are hearing from John from California. His greatest life lesson has been, do you, boo-boo? Mom, what do you think about that life lesson? Do you, boo-boo?
Oh,
what do you take that to mean?
Well,
he said,
I will say, you know, that particular term, you know, when it first came about was pretty negative, because I saw it taking people down a wrong path, trying to do them.
Yes.
But, which I'm thinking is where he's going with this, is to not, you know, listen to all those negative things that people have to say about you. You know, follow what God has for you. You know, God has set a path for you. He's given you the tools to get there. He'll direct you and show you which way to go. Don't let anybody get in your way and alter that.
Yeah.
You know, continue to do you, boo-boo.
Continue to do you, boo-boo. What I took from that, kind of what I said earlier in the recording, is unlearn that disease to please. Yeah. Because when you let people put labels on you, it puts limits on you. Yeah. It truly does.
It does.
And one of the things that helped me overcome was, I believe it's Timothy 4:12, and it says, don't let people look down on you because you are young, but set an examples for the believers in speech, conduct, purity, and truth. And I was like, okay, I'm not too young to have a compound effect. The good things that you do compounded over time continuously can change the world. So, all right, well, thank you so much for being here with us today. Please tune in next week at the same time, 8 p.m. That will be Thanksgiving. And I also want to say that will be our last episode. So a lot of people have been writing me in and saying, you know, like, I want to come on. But look, the book is only 7 chapters. So we have 7 episodes. But we'll see what I have up my sleeve next time. But until then, please be sure to check out the book. Read Chapter 6, Use Your Youth Wisely. I want to hear your thoughts on it. You can always find all of these episodes online on YouTube, or you can go strictly to my website, LanishaPorter.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you next week. I love you. Be safe out there, and happy early Thanksgiving.
Happy early Thanksgiving.